Parents need to be vigilant. This is a scary world out there on the internet. It's no longer, you know, back in the 80s it was stranger danger. It was, you know, the thought of a creepy person in a car snatching a child away. Well, that no longer has to occur. The exploitation of children can happen without the child ever leaving the home. That child can be exploited right in their bedroom, communicating with somebody online. So that's why my greatest advice to parents is to be engaged. Know what your children are doing online, because they can be victimized right from the safety of their own home.
Predators will use any means to communicate with children. And obviously the first thing is to pretend like they're a child. And they will communicate and try to get their trust enough that they start asking about personal information. You know, when we grew up, and I grew up, my parents told me never talk to a stranger. And that was something that was really emphasized as a child. Not just to me, but all my friends growing up. We heard the slogans, we heard everything about it. But yet, here we are in 2022, and the world with the electronic devices that we have and connection to the internet. Not one parent is telling their child, hey, don't talk to a stranger while you're online. If you don't know them, you shouldn't talk to them.
So one thing that parents can be aware of is that just because your kids are at home and they're in their room, if they have a computer that's hooked up to the internet in their room, you're allowing the general public into your house. You don't know who your child is talking to if you are not intimately involved with the social media platforms or other type of electronic communications your child uses.
When COVID hit, there was unexpected, undesired externalities, consequences that happened. When the governments shut down economies, they also shut down schools, after-school programs. Everything was shut down. Those are safety nets for our kids. They're actually in safe places. Instead, they're told, sit here, stay home, stay on your iPhone, stay on your laptop or whatever device you're using, while we go scavenge for our jobs and for toilet paper and whatever else we're being told we have to go get. And we see this insane uptick, like in the millions of additional reports to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children of potential child sex abuse cases originating online. And there's research been done on this, and there's chatter that we can point to that law enforcement picked up on the dark net and other places where they're talking about harvest time. They're sitting ducks. The kids are home, the pedophiles are home, and that's how they find our kids online.
They're being introduced and groomed really young, especially after the pandemic where everybody's forced to be on some sort of device, that these kids are forced to be doing their schoolwork on an iPad or on a computer, while the parents are also having to be at home with the kids while working, and they can't necessarily put all their focus on their kids in front of these devices when they have their own job that has to be done. And so we kind of saw a huge spike in that with both cyber tips, other grooming stuff. Video games is huge from my side of things.
So doing this for several years, I've come to my own personal determination that social media is a bad thing for some people. Not everybody. A lot of people may have the ability to think critically and to protect themselves from the dangers of social media, but that's not everybody. There are those out there who can be sucked into social media and become a victim in a bunch of different ways.
Facebook, Instagram, Kik, oh my gosh, TikTok, just a variety of different platforms that we see. One of the main things though that we're seeing is the online platform in terms of playing online video games with others. And what is happening is that those individuals are being exploited via the chat feature of that online video game. And they think they're playing a video game with someone who's also 8 or 9, whatever, and they trust that person and they think of that person as a peer. But in fact, that person is grooming them to be exploited. And there are so many individuals that are exploited, so many children that are exploited in that very way through the online chat feature of a video game.
Right now, one of the most popular places for our kids is Discord. They create these kind of like private, they call them servers, which are like private chat rooms where you can join together and talk about things that you are interested in with others who are interested in the same thing. It's largely often used for gaming. So a lot of kids who are interested in gaming will join a Discord server to talk about their favorite games and how to beat them. And but what we're seeing is that with COVID, the amount of kids using Discord has skyrocketed to the millions. And Discord was never really made for kids. And Discord hasn't caught up with the fact that most of their users now are children, and they haven't created safety mechanisms for that. So what we're seeing is that predators are joining these servers or kind of private chat rooms, and they're gaining the trust of a lot of the youth in there by sharing things that they think they have in common, and they're grooming them. Often that grooming is then moving to other platforms like TikTok or Snapchat or Instagram, where the relationship continues to grow and be furthered. And often these kids are enticed to create child pornography, child sexual abuse material, self-create it and send it to these predators who often they think are other kids their same age, only they're not. And we're seeing that a lot of this material is being uploaded to pornography websites or other social media sites, being exchanged. It almost never stays between the child and who they sent it to. It's almost always being shared elsewhere.
So I see a lot of parents just wanting to be restrictive. They say, well, this is easy, I'll just take all that away from my youth so that they can't have that. And people are going to use these networks, including our kids. If we restrict it from our kids, they will find a way. They'll do it at school, they'll do it on a friend's cell phone. So education is key. And that's part of the talking about it, is getting the right information in front of the people that need to see it, promoting the education so that they can see the signs of what it is and not fall victim to it. Or for somebody that is around them that has fallen victim to it or is about to, they can guide that person back into the lane where they're not going to be exploited, because exploitation and trafficking always exists in a dark corner. And when I say dark corner, I don't mean that literally. I just mean it in a figurative sense, that they want the person who's going to be exploited or trafficked away, out of seen, forgotten about, and in the dark. And talking about it and bringing education to the issue brings light to the issue. And we know that when there's light on the issue and people are watching for that it's easier for them to stay away from the darkness of becoming entrapped in it. But we just don't talk about it very much. And it's something that is uncomfortable, just doesn't get a lot of attention.
Communicate with their children. That's such a big one. I think, I come from a household where my parents, just culturally, we didn't talk about pretty much anything. Like, my parents went to work, they came home, they fed us, and that was good. Great parents, and I love them to death. But at the same time, there were so many things that, looking back, I wish that we would have been more open about. And I have a younger sister who's in her teenage years right now, and I felt like it was my responsibility as we were growing up to kind of tell her about some of the things that we were learning about just growing up, And it's all about communication, making sure that your kids feel comfortable with talking to you about certain things, because if they don't feel comfortable talking to you, they're going to find somebody else to talk about. And the question is, what is that other person going to be teaching them that you probably would have done differently or not done at all?
A lot of times, if you're at home and you see, maybe you're walking close to your child and they have their laptop open and all of a sudden they close the lid, that's a key indication that maybe they're doing something in it they're not supposed to, or looking at something they're not supposed to, or the simple fact is, like, me as a father, I understand I'm supposed to trust my children and make sure that they don't make bad decisions. So I would ask, hey, can I see your phone? And if they offer 1,000 different excuses of why you can't see their phone, that could be another clue. So there's a bunch of different lack of a better word, cues that people can look for. Maybe not engaging in conversation with the family if they used to. Maybe even at the dinner table, they're always on their phone, or anywhere in their house they're just on their phone. It's scary, but it's almost like an addiction. Technology is great, but with the availability of what's on these devices or what you can do with it is actually harming our kids.
The stats today tell us that 1 out of 9 kids, I mean, the great equalizer is 1 out of 9 kids, any zip code, any bedroom, is at any time being approached and pursued and groomed by a trafficker. So there is all kinds of training for teaching children they're just basic red flags, but if they're not taught, a child doesn't have any idea that they're being targeted. They literally, when I started in this over a decade ago, it was the average age that a little girl posted a naked or topless selfie was 12. Today, the average age is 7. Children are like slowly being groomed and desensitized on social media, and it's textbook. So we come in with the antidote. Speak Up contains the antidote to what the predators are using. They have a few different terms. Like they'll say to a little girl, like they will look. We've seen training with agents that will come on and say, we're going to post a picture. We're going to pretend it's an 11-year-old, and they start a timer. 20 seconds, 19 seconds, 18 seconds, and like we got to hit. You see them, they move in, and they're posing as 10-year-old boys, 11-year-old boys, 12-year-old boys, and they say the same things. You're so pretty. I bet you didn't know how pretty you are. Wait, can you lean in a little closer? Don't be shy. I want to be your friend. And for a child in their room that maybe isn't popular or doesn't have a good parental relationship, they are so taken with, oh, just lean in. Oh, I'm pretty. And we actually I was at the White House for a task force meeting, and one of the tribal chiefs, because a lot of times people are like, well, I know my child is not being sexually abused. We always say that's the vulnerability. A child that ends up trafficked, 92% have been sexually abused. But we were listening to this guy, a tribal chief, say, we made the mistake. We made our daughter's world too small. We thought she had family pride. We thought she felt loved, and she did. He said, but it took one guy on the internet to tell her that she was beautiful in a way he's never seen before. And if he wanted to, he pretended he was a little older teenage boy, and if she wanted to, he could help her become an international model. He said, my own daughter, who we know was not abused, that we know was protected and loved, we were 52 miles from the nearest Walmart, 50 miles from the nearest McDonald's. She found her own ride, and we lost her for 2 years. So for us, we do this. I rise up for kids like that, to protect them and to empower them and teach them that is such a tool.
The red flags for a parent, all of a sudden your kid's asking you for more money than they usually have. It's like, what do you need $200 for? They're a little more embarrassed, a little withdrawn. They're very reluctant to share their passwords, very reluctant to tell you who they're talking to online. If they're online late at night, that could be an indicator as well, because like it was said prior, some of these predators are not in the US. They're overseas, where time difference, sometimes it's 12 hours difference. So you might want to start looking, okay, why are you talking to this person at 2, 3 in the morning? Who are they? Predators find a person with very little life experience to be fooled rather easily. So when they offer them something that seems too good to be true, they'll probably believe it, because they haven't been burnt yet. They haven't been victimized. That thing that was supposed to be the greatest thing on earth hasn't gone wrong yet, but it will. So it's very easy for these guys to do that. So the fact that it's easy to do it, it's one thing. The other thing is they can't cope. Their coping mechanism for some reason hasn't developed. So they see a problem in front of them and it's the end of the world. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it is. It's this I'm focused on in front of me. It's going to destroy my world. It's done. As adults, we realize, look, I made a mistake. I'm gonna figure it out. Yeah, I might get embarrassed, whatever. It's not gonna be the end of the world, because we've been there before. Kids haven't. So they exploit those things, and it's easier for them to do that.
There are adults that still get catfished and taken advantage of every single day. We have so many people, so many cases that are open in law enforcement with people sending money, seniors getting taken advantage of through phishing schemes, people who have provided money to folks who are using identities that are, not valid in any way, shape, or form. If the adults in our society can't tell the difference, then what makes us think that children would be able to tell the difference in any way, shape, or form?
There are many signs that a parent might look for that would indicate that their child may be being exploited or potentially abused. And some of those are that they withdraw unexpectedly. They are secretive about a variety of things going on with them, that they spend a great deal of time away from the home and their parents aren't necessarily sure where that individual is. Also, individuals who are being exploited often change the way that they dress. They may have multiple cell phones. They may have multiple hotel key cards. They may have a tattoo that the parent didn't know anything about. Those types of things are some examples of things that a parent might look for.
There's applications out there that that are paid services where you can kind of lock down the phone to allow certain apps to be installed or not installed, to see what text messages your kids are sending. It will flag on like self-harm or grooming behaviors and alert the parents. You can pay for these services for your kids' phones. There's also things like Google Family Link is one for Android phones. It doesn't work as well on Apple phones, but it's a way for the family to lock down and LoJack the phone to keep locations of where your kids are at, what their internet history is, what's their texting history like, what are they doing, what pictures are they taking on their phone. I've heard of some parents and other people once you give a kid a device, having them sign a contract that says that they can search the device, that they can do these things to the device, and that this device it's a privilege. It's not yours. You don't own this. This is mine. I'm allowing you to use this, and you have like a usage agreement. When you fill out software and they have that end user license agreement, it's almost like a privacy policy or a license agreement with your kids on the usage of the phone. Parents you need to establish this like right away, because kids are gonna feel safe on their phones or their iPads or their tablets, whatever the device is. They feel safe on them, and once they feel that it's theirs and that it's owned by them. Trying to take those away, if this is not something you're doing at the start of things, it makes it even harder later on to grab these devices. And I think there's arguments, well, I trust my kids and I trust my kids, I trust what they're doing is right, and they deserve their privacy. Well, I'm not telling you parents to like go through your kid's diary, but absolutely I trust my daughter. I don't trust everybody else out there that's trying to talk to my daughter. So I want to make sure that she's being smart, and I'm not trying to invade her privacy, but it's my responsibility to keep her safe, and I need to know what that activity looks like on her phone.
Really, parents need to be where their kids are. If your kid is on TikTok, you should be on TikTok. Not that you need to spend hours there, but you need to understand how these platforms work. You need to, be part of their lives, laugh with them, make these videos together. We see that bringing families closer together, but also it just helps you stay aware of the environment that they're in. And it helps your kids to know you're present, you're there, you're watching. You should also, put up guardrails. There's so many tools today that allow you to put up guardrails. Things like the built-in parental controls, like almost every platform and device have them. Are they perfect? No, but they're better than nothing. Or there's systems like Bark. That is my all-time favorite. Bark is so good. It allows you to tracks what your kids are doing online. It tracks something like 30 different problematic behaviors like self-harm ideation or body image issues or the grooming that we've talked about. And then it will send parents a notice so you can have a conversation with your kids about it. And so these kinds of guardrails are key. But my advice is guardrails, be where your kids are, have conversations, really work on your relationship with your kids. If they feel comfortable coming to you and talking to you about their life experiences, you'll be able to help make them make sense of it.
So monitoring devices, there's great software out there. You can call your internet service provider, whoever the carrier is for all your phones, computers, and just talk to them. They have the tools. You pay a small fee, and for example, you could have all your kids' devices, and this is your phone, it's your kid, so don't act like, oh, my kid's privacy. No, safety comes first here, okay? They're not adults, they're your kids. But they can send you 1, 2, or 3 reports a day to tell you who your kid's been communicating with, what websites they've been to, everything, screenshot, everything. It's yours, right? There's no expectation of privacy for children when it's your phone. Sun Tzu talked about, one of the first principles of war is to know the enemy. So parents, know the enemy. Find out everything that they can do to get your kid. It's a war that it takes years. Okay, the entirety of your kid's existence in your home. You've got to be proactive and you've got to be strategic. Learn the enemy's tactics, find out how you're going to defend against those tactics through educating yourself, and then deploy proactively. Get in front of this, get in front of your kids.
And I asked the parents, hey, you check the phone? Yeah, I go through their Snapchat. Oh, I'll say to them, hey, what about their My Eyes Only folder? What about that folder? They look at me like I have 4 heads. I don't know anything about what you're talking about. Well, there is a secured folder within that application which requires you to put a 4-digit PIN in where you can access messages, images, and videos. And parents look at me like, I never knew that. So they are not aware of even some of the things, if they even the platforms that we're talking about, they think they know about. They really don't know everything about that platform. And that's just one example where we go into that particular My Eyes Only folder and find, where the children are taking nude images or videos and sending them and receiving them and storing them in there so their parents cannot see them because they don't make it to their gallery. It's not going there because they're saving it in that particular folder, which is an encrypted folder which requires a 4-digit PIN. Even young kids are using this.
If a parent finds out that their child is being exploited online, the best thing for them to do is to report it to law enforcement. And part of the reason why is because law enforcement has tools that they can, in order to accurately conduct their investigation. It's very important for law enforcement in order to get any kind of device that a child has used to communicate with a predator. So more importantly is to make sure that the parents don't have the child delete all of the information or the communication, because that's going to be very important to turn over to law enforcement. A lot of the times, maybe sometimes kids get scared and they just delete everything. So it's very important for parents to know and have that communication with their child. Don't delete any communication, don't delete any profiles where you may have communicated with this individual, because that's going to be a tool that's going to be very important for law enforcement in order to do their investigation. So primarily is report it to law enforcement, make sure you preserve any communication that they've had, any devices, whether it's cell phone, laptops, computers, where they've used to communicate with that individual, should be turned over to law enforcement so they can actually preserve the evidence in a forensically sound manner. So that's going to help law enforcement really investigate the case thoroughly and hopefully see that case for successful prosecution.
There's a few things that you can do if it does happen. One, for the kids out there, if you are extorted, it's very important that you report this to your parents. Tell your parents right away. And then tell your parents that you want to report this to law enforcement. It's important, the speed is important, because if we're able to get the case and investigate it as soon as possible, there's a better chance for us to be able to identify the suspect potentially, or at least identify that it's out of the country and what's going on. The longer you wait, the harder it is for us to do a criminal investigation, because the criminals are very flexible and they move around a lot and they change things on us. So report it right away to your parents, and the parents out there should turn around and come to law enforcement and make that report.
I think the key thing here is this is something, when it happens to somebody, it tends to, the initial reaction is to make it just extremely private. not talk to anyone about it. And unfortunately, that's a lot for the person who's being exploited to deal with. And so having open communication with those that are affected by it and letting them know that it's okay, that they've been taken advantage of, that it happens to a lot of people, and then report that information to the police. Oftentimes these traffickers are banking on that secret, or those that are exploiting, they're banking on that the person they're taking advantage of won't tell anybody because they're embarrassed. They're embarrassed that they sent the picture. They're embarrassed of where the picture may end up. And sadly, I mean, it results in terrible things. We have people that take their own lives because of cases like this. And it's just a tragedy because we have a bunch of people that are willing to help and to stop this behavior. And it does happen to a lot of people. So just getting to the police, giving them the information and getting it put to a stop.
You know, I was recently in a training where the presenter was talking about the importance of parents reminding their children that nothing that they ever do is ever going to keep the parent from loving them. And I think it's such a simple thing, but such a powerful thing too. A lot of the times kids end up either sharing pictures of themselves and they feel ashamed, or they feel like it's their fault, they should have known better, when really they're just victims of somebody's tactics into these different forms of exploitation. And I would say definitely getting law enforcement involved, but also having that conversation with your child as far as, hey, it's not your fault, we still love you, we're gonna get through this together. I just thinking about, you know, kids thinking that their whole world is their friends and social circle, and the fact that, you know, if one picture gets out, they think that their whole world is over. And I don't know statistics, but I know there's been quite a rise in suicides ever since social media was introduced, because now all of a sudden there's this whole different stressor to their lives, and now you're adding somebody that's exploiting them and they're doing more things that they're not comfortable with for that same reason. Well, it just, you know, continues that cycle of do this or else, and more things get asked of them, so then they do that, and then there's a different level of it. So then the kids kind of feel like they're stuck until it gets to the point where they really don't know what to do. So I think it's really important for parents to have those conversations with the kids and to just remind them that, you know, kind of what Matt was talking about earlier, it's so important for parents to be involved and to know, and for the kids to also even just know that the parents are going to be extra vigilant with their social media, and they're going to know what they're talking about. Not so much about invading their privacy, but more for them to know that, you know, this is probably not right. So if I don't want my parents to know about it, I probably shouldn't be doing it.
For me, the very first thing that comes to mind is myself when I was little. You know, I was that girl, I was that child that had this little idyllic, you know, life, and then at about 6, 7 years old, I had a little bit of sexual abuse enter. It wasn't enough, it was someone in the family, so it was just confusing, but it was a little marker. And then I'm going all the way to 12, and I have a family member who's also a worship leader in a church that we belong to. When we vacation, we go someplace all the time. And I was molested there by this guy on the way to church. And then he gets out of the car, grabs his guitar, goes to the front of the stage. I think that at that moment, I was changed and I didn't have words. And as my other uncle went to put his arm around me, I shook. And I thought, oh no, is the guy really ever going to be safe? And I kept that secret, and it led to other secrets, and it led to not even feeling that it mattered to express it. And I know that who I was prior to all that is not who I ended up being. 14 to 20 was a struggle. And when you look at the stats today, the majority of kids are struggling in ways that we've never seen before. So for me, I think of what I was as a child, the intervention I needed, when I had teachers say I was a bad influence versus, hey, what happened to her? What's going on? No one thought how to look deeper and to understand. And so for me, it's for that child that doesn't have an adult in their life that understands, that has parents that have had generational abuse and they don't know how to protect. And so we're standing in the gap for every one of those kids.
The honest truth is we're seeing there's so much hope. Today, it's such a different fight than it was 10 years ago when I started. We're seeing that nearly all business leaders, legislators, they all agree that sexual abuse and exploitation has no place in our society. We're seeing massive changes. For example, when it comes to pornography, we've seen that really child sexual abuse, sex trafficking, and pornography have merged online into one industry. And as a result, we've been able to show, the countless survivors and help to give them a platform to speak up about how their abuse was filmed and uploaded and monetized by these mega corporations. As a result, we've made sure that all mainstream companies like MasterCard or Kraft Heinz or even Roku have cut ties with the pornography industry, namely with Pornhub. We're seeing legislation being dropped to hold these companies accountable and to reduce child sex trafficking on these platforms. So we're seeing massive impacts. There have never ever been lawsuits against big tech for their role in sex trafficking and making millions of dollars from this until now. Now there is a movement of lawsuits. 15 actually have just been filed in the last 18 months against big tech and the pornography industry for facilitating child sex trafficking. And we're winning in the courts. For the first time ever, these cases are not being dismissed and the judges are ruling on our side, saying that these big tech companies are responsible for facilitating child sex trafficking.
Who inspires me more than anyone to rise up for children are parents that I meet who have employed these tactics that we're talking about, who have decided to be a parent and a protector more than a hero and a friend. Those parents who are willing to take the time, because you have to sacrifice a lot of things to fight this war. It's a war, like I said. You have to fight a lot of things. It's so much easier. Every parent knows this. I know this. How many times I come home from work, I'm tired. Here, just take the iPad, go watch it. I don't care. And my wife is my hero in this. She says, nope, can't do that. The war doesn't, predators don't sleep. The war doesn't sleep. And so who inspires me more than anyone are those unsung heroes who have protected their children from dozens of predators, mostly not even knowing that they have done that. I rise up for children because I'm past the point of no return and that I have seen the suffering, and it's not small. It's a $150 billion a year business, the trading of men, women, and children, and millions of children stuck in this. I've seen too much. I'm past that point where I could ever stop. And when I see that and I see the projection, but you intervene, whether as o.u.r, whether as an undercover operator, whether as a parent, whatever, you intervene and you get to see, and I've seen it so many times, the projection, or you get to see the trajectory of a child's life. If you hadn't intervened, where they went. And because you did intervene, where they went. And I have 2 children that we adopted, who we rescued in 2014, one of the very first operations o.u.r did, 2 Haitian kids who were being sold by traffickers. And I know definitively what their lives would have been had there not been an intervention. But because there was an intervention, I now see what their life is today, how happy they are and how thriving they are. And I want that for every child. I want to give every child that opportunity because I've seen the alternative. And that's what makes me rise up, with seeing my children every day, knowing that this can be the life of any vulnerable child if we intervene. And more than operators and even law enforcement, I call on parents. You are more effective than all of us if you will engage this fight, and you will rise up with us to protect.